You think the party establishment?
Pourquoi vous faites marche arrière? Pourquoi vous faites marche arrière sur le gain en capital? Sur le gain en capital, pourquoi vous faites marche arrière sur le gain en capital? Attendez, sur le gain en capital, pourquoi vous faites marche arrière?
C'est difficile d'entendre parce que tout le monde crie. OK, alors...
Sur le gain capital,
Okay.
pourquoi vous faites marche arrière?
Ms. Freeland, why is most of cabinet lining up behind your rival instead of you?
Thank you for the question, and I'm really glad to be here today to be meeting with my caucus colleagues. I am so grateful to the colleagues who have been supporting me. I want to highlight, I'm especially grateful to the people who bring the caucus together, do the hard work in our caucus, the workhorses of our caucus. I'm really glad to have the support of the current Ontario Caucus Chair, Michael Coteau, the former Ontario Caucus Chair, Jamie Maloney, the Quebec Caucus Chair, Stéphane Lauzon, the Chair of Women's Caucus, Leah Taylor-Roy. And for me, a huge emphasis is going to be reviving the party, reviving the grassroots of the party, reviving a real democratization process in the party. We can never again be in a position where the leader is the only person who decides who the leader is. And I think Liberal Party grassroots members and caucus need to have a greater say in what we do and how we do it.
Prime Minister, Donald Trump says NATO countries should spend 5% on defense. Can you address his comments, please?
Over the past number of years, we brought Canada's defense spending up from below 1%, where it was under the previous Conservative government, to a path towards full 2% in the coming years. We have close to tripled projected defense spending since 2015, and we're going to continue to work with our NATO partners to make sure that we're doing everything necessary to keep Canada safe. The next NATO meeting is in Netherlands in The Hague, but Canada has a strong track to invest in protecting the North, protecting Canadians in a complicated world.
It's 5%.
Donald Trump has announced that he wants a golden age for the American economy. That means they're going to need more energy, more minerals, more steel and aluminum, more lumber, more concrete, more of the things that Canada is already sending them as a reliable and trustworthy partner. If he does move forward on tariffs on Canada, as he has said, whether it be back on January 20th or on February 1st or February 15th as a Valentine's Day present, or on April 1st, or whenever he says he's going to do it, as he keeps repeating, two things will happen. One, Canada will have a strong, robust response, because we don't want this, but we will respond if necessary. And two, prices for American consumers on just about everything will go up. And we don't think he wants that. So we're going to be there. He has talked about the border as being a great preoccupation for him. We have highlighted that less than 1% of illegal drugs coming into the United States, less than 1% of migrants going into the United States come from Canada. But we're still investing over $1 billion in strengthening our borders. And as an illustration of what we've been saying all along, Toronto Police and the Border Services Agency just seized about 835 kilograms of cocaine coming in from the United States into Canada via Mexican cartels. So we have challenges at our border on both sides of the border, and we are there to work constructively with them on those issues.
With Scott's position now on against all export tariffs and against dollar-for-dollar response, who speaks for Canada vis-a-vis?
The federal government has continued to say clearly, as I will, that everything is on the table. But our efforts are first and foremost to make sure that tariffs don't come on Canada. It would be bad for Canada, yes, but it would also be bad for American consumers. And that's why we are continuing to make the case that rather than restrict the goods coming from Canada, the U.S. should be working even more with Canada on our energy, on our critical minerals, on the goods that they need to be able to have the economic growth that Donald Trump has promised. That is our first choice. Next, if they do move forward on tariffs, we are ready to respond in a strong way, but in a way that will be stepping up gradually with one goal, not to figure out how to manage these tariffs and live with them over the long term, but to figure out how to get them removed as quickly as possible, and on that, everything is on the table.
This will be my 5th visit to the U.S. and meeting the Trump administration since the election.
Joelle, I'm wondering what you make of the split among premiers who disagree with the federal government's strategy, Smith and Moe. Who speaks for Canada in all of this? Are you concerned that now you have 2 provinces pretty much offside?
Well, I think it is a moment of unity. I think Canadians have no time for partisanship right now. They just want us to be united. They just want us to make sure that we are there to defend Canadian jobs. There's a lot of anxiety out there. There's a lot of fear. And so it is time for political leaders, may you be NDP, may you be Conservative, may you be Liberal or Bloc, to work as one. And I think that when it comes also to some premiers, what I've seen based on my conversations with them has been we want to be constructive. We understand that Alberta jobs are important, as Ontario jobs, as Quebec jobs. It's not a competition. We can all work together to make sure that ultimately we face together this existential threat against our economy and against workers.
Are Americans confused by the mixed messages that they're getting from Canada?
What I'm seeing in Washington is that not a lot of people are aware of tariffs, and Canadian tariffs in particular. I think that, we think a lot about the U.S. The U.S. doesn't think necessarily about Canada that much. And a lot of things are happening right now in Washington. President Trump is signing many, many different executive orders. Lots of things are still in transition. The Secretary of Commerce is not even confirmed yet. The only member of the administration that is working on this file that has been confirmed is Marco Rubio. And so we will be continuing to work with him.
What did Mr. Rubio say to you when you mentioned that if you hit us with tariffs, we're going to respond and it's going to affect U.S. consumers?
Well, he understands that not only this will have an impact on Americans, but this will have an impact on how the U.S. engaged in the world.
With their friends.
And that will have an impact geopolitically. He's the Secretary of State. He's in charge of having lots of relations with many countries around the world. I also talked about the importance of standing up against China together. And Rubio himself has been very hawkish against China. So I think that we have a good interlocutor to be able at least to talk to and to be constructive with. That's my job as the top diplomat in the country, to make sure that I create these relationships. And we now have a process, and the process is clearly highlighted by the executive order. There will be lots of rhetoric. We will hear a lot of different versions coming from south of the border. We need to put our head down, we need to be united, and we need to defend Canadian jobs.
How are you supporting Chrystia?
Look, Chrystia Freeland is the best person to take on Donald Trump. She's a fierce defender of Canada. She left a lucrative job in New York to come and fight a contested nomination, and then ran in a really hard by-election and won. And she's won every election since, and I really think it's important to understand Caucus. And look, we need a leader who can hit the ground running on day one, no training wheels required, and that's Chrystia Freeland.
How is it, though, like as a member of Caucus, Ms. Freeland is now walking away from backtracking on promises that she stood up and full-throated defended as a minister and had all of you guys defend? I mean, is there not a tension there? Like, how disavowing the things that she stood for 3 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago?
I think there's a recognition on the part of a lot of us that there are some policies that needed improvement, and that there were some policies that, upon the passage of time, Canadians made clear to us were not palatable. I think that the Carbontax is an example of that. I actually don't believe so much that the emission reduction objectives and ambitions, for example, of the Carbontax is something that Canadians are against. I think where we as a government went wrong is that we failed in our communication of it from the start. We weren't very concise in helping Canadians understand why we believed it was an important policy. So the carbon tax, in large part because of the effectiveness of political opposition in the country, has become a non-starter.
Karina Gould has said that she won't get rid of the carbon tax, she would just freeze it. So what does that say that you're the main defender of the carbon tax? You're going to back a candidate who's potentially going to get rid of it?
I haven't seen that comment from my colleague, Minister Gould.
It's a moment in time where the candidates are all saying that Canadians have lost faith in the Liberal government. They don't trust them anymore. And Ms. Freeland is out repudiating vocally promises that she was staunchly in favor of just 2 months ago. So how do you square that circle when you support her? I mean, she's saying now that the things they all asked you guys to run on and take to your constituents were actually terrible ideas.
Well, I don't think she said that, but what I do think what you're hearing from Ms. Freeland is the vision that she has for the country. I think that when you're a minister of the Crown, you're expected to carry out the decisions of the Prime Minister of the day. I think Madame Freeland is putting forward a vision for how she would, the policy she would put forward, how she would address the challenges facing Canadians if she were Prime Minister. I think that's what you're hearing.
Leadership candidates seem to be moving away from the carbon tax. What do you think of that? The idea of your party
say that again?
What do you think of the idea of your party moving away from the carbon tax?
I'm a Quebecer where we have cap and trade. It's worked well from before we were in government. So I think there are other ways to go about making sure that we protect the environment and grow the economy. And I think that's what I'm seeing from Mr. Carr.